Before we begin, if you have a moment, leave a comment. Have you ever had to choose between trusting someone you love and trusting your own instincts? Your perspective really matters here. Quick note, some details in this story are fictionalized for reflection and storytelling. But the lesson, the emotional heart of it, is what I hope stays with you. I walked into my own kitchen and watched my wife of 30 years end a phone call the second she saw me. "I have to go," Elaine said into the phone, her voice suddenly tight. "We'll talk later." She pressed the red button before whoever was on the other end could respond. Her hand dropped to the counter, the phone landing face down on the granite with a soft click that felt too deliberate. When she turned to face me, there was a split second, maybe half a heartbeat, where her eyes held something I'd never seen before. Panic, maybe? Or calculation. Then it was gone. Replaced by a smile that arrived too fast, like she'd pulled it from a drawer. "Morning," she said. Too bright. "Coffee's fresh." "I'm Brent Carlisle, 54 years old. Operations manager at the Deer Park refinery for the last 23 years. I know systems. I know when pressure builds in places it shouldn't. When small anomalies compound into failures. Stand in our kitchen that Tuesday morning in early June, watching Elaine pour coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. I knew something was building. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Oh, just someone from church," she said, still too cheerful. "About the fundraiser. You know how Joyce gets when she's coordinating volunteers." The thing about being married to someone for 3 decades is you learn their rhythms. Elaine, 52, had taught second grade for 28 years before retiring last spring. She could manage 25 7-year-olds with infinite patience. She never over-explained, never filled silence with unnecessary details. Yet here she was, launching into a story about Joyce Miller and table assignments, talking faster than the situation required. I took the coffee she offered and nodded at appropriate intervals. The kitchen smelled like it always did. Hazelnut creamer. The faint sweetness of yesterday's banana bread. Everything normal except for the tightness around her eyes and the way she wouldn't quite meet my gaze. It had been happening for 2 weeks. Small things, at first. Elaine stepping onto the back porch to take calls. Her voice dropping to a murmur when I walked into a room. Her phone, which used to sit carelessly on the counter, now stayed face down. Always within her immediate reach. She'd started closing the door to our home office when she was in there. Something she'd never done in all the years we'd lived in this house. Individually, each incident was nothing, background noise, the kind of thing you dismiss because questioning it feels like paranoia. But together, accumulated over 14 days, they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore anymore. When did the silence in your own home start feeling like something you had to translate? I'd caught myself doing it standing in the hallway outside the office, listening to the tone of her voice through the closed door, watching the way her shoulders tensed when her phone buzzed during dinner, counting the seconds between the notification and her glance at the screen, measuring her reaction time like it was data I could plot. This wasn't me. I wasn't the husband who tracked his wife's movements, who suspected shadows. We'd built something solid. We'd raised 2 kids. Iris, our daughter, married and teaching elementary school like her mother, and Grady, our son, working at a logistics company. We had Sunday dinners and a mortgage 8 years from payoff, and a bedroom where we still reached for each other in the dark. But that morning, standing in our kitchen while Elaine talked about tablecloths, I felt something I'd never felt before, an invisible boundary between us. Something she was protecting. Something she didn't want me to see. I waited until dinner that evening to push. Elaine had made chicken fried steak, my favorite, which should have been comforting but instead felt like strategy. We ate mostly in silence. The kind that used to be companionable but now felt weighted. "Elaine," I said finally, setting down my fork. "Is everything all right? You seem distracted lately." The smile again, instant and too wide. "Distracted, number no. Just busy with the church fundraiser. You know how Joyce gets. She called me 3 times today about the raffle prizes. 3 times. And then there's the whole situation with the parking lot. Apparently, the city requires a permit if we're expecting more than 50 people. Linda Brennan suggested we move everything to the community center, but the rental fee there is twice what we're paying the church, and that would eat into the scholarship fund, which defeats the entire purpose. She kept going. Details piling on details, a wall of words that should have answered my question, but instead raised a dozen more. This was the woman who taught me that the best teachers know when to stop talking, when to let silence do the work. Now she was filling every gap, covering something with verbal scaffolding. 30 years? You don't build that kind of history and misread the fundamentals. I knew Elaine better than I knew the specs on any machine in my plant. I could predict her reactions before plot turns. Could tell when she was getting sick before the first symptoms showed. We'd survived raising teenagers and her mother's death and my layoff and the 1,000 small crises that test a marriage's tensile strength. But sitting across from her that evening, watching her smile that wasn't quite reaching her eyes, I realized something that made my chest tighten. I was afraid to push harder. Afraid that if I demanded real answers, I'd break something that couldn't be repaired, that the wall between us would become permanent instead of temporary. So I nodded. I said the fundraiser sounded complicated. I cleared the dishes while she talked about raffle ticket prices, and I hated myself a little for choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. That night, lying beside her in the dark, I listened to her breathing. It was too controlled, too measured. She was pretending to sleep, and we both knew it. The space between us in the bed felt wider than 12 inches. It felt like a canyon, somewhere in the house. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice. I felt her body tense beside me, felt her force herself not to move, not to check it. The third buzz came 30 seconds later. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Just lay there in the dark, pretending not to hear what we both heard perfectly well. And I lay there beside her, pretending I didn't notice her pretending. Both of us performing normalcy in the theater our marriage had somehow become. The buzzing stopped sometime after 3 in the morning. I watched the clock change over, waiting for Elaine's breathing to shift from performance into real sleep. It never did. We both lay there pretending until the alarm ended it at 6. Neither of us mentioned it at breakfast. The call came through on a Tuesday afternoon while I was running tolerances on a contract job. The kind of unknown Houston number I'd normally let roll to voicemail. But my hand reached for it anyway. "Mr. Carlyle, this is Luciana Caldwell from Prosperity Bank." I stepped away from the CNC machine, pressing the phone tighter against my ear to hear over the shop noise. "Yes. I'm calling about a commercial loan. Are you aware your wife Elaine signed as primary borrower 3 months ago? $450,000. The number didn't register at first. Too many zeros. Like hearing a measurement in the wrong units, nothing to anchor it to reality. "There must be some mistake," I said. "My wife wouldn't. We don't have any loan for that amount." "I understand this is unexpected." Luciana Caldwell's voice was careful, professional. 47 years old, I'd later learn. With 2 decades in commercial lending at Prosperity Bank. The kind of banker who'd learned to recognize the difference between deception and genuine shock. "Mr. Carlyle, I need you to come in tomorrow if possible. We should discuss this in person." "What kind of loan?" "For what? That's part of what we need to discuss." "But Mr. Carlyle," she paused, "the person you need to worry about isn't your wife." The machine behind me beeped, signaling the cycle was complete. I didn't move. "What does that mean?" "It means I think you and I need to have a conversation tomorrow morning. Can you come to our downtown branch at 9? How does a stranger at a bank know more about your wife's life than you do after 30 years of marriage?" I agreed to the meeting. Then I stood in my shop office, surrounded by the smell of cutting fluid and metal shavings, trying to make my brain process what I'd just heard. $450,000. 3 months ago. March. While I was working overtime on the Exxon contract, while Elaine was planning the church Easter service, while our life was exactly what it had always been. Except it wasn't. The phone calls, the closed doors, the face-down phone on the counter, all of it clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. The drive home took 17 minutes. I didn't remember a single turn. Elaine was in the kitchen when I walked through the door at 6:15. Earlier than usual. She looked up from chopping vegetables, and I watched her face do the calculation. Early arrival, my expression. Something wrong? You're home, she said, too bright again. I waited until after dinner, until the dishes were done and she'd moved into the bedroom, starting her evening routine. She was sitting at the vanity, removing her earrings, when I closed the door behind me. Elaine, I got a call today from Prosperity Bank about a loan. $450,000. Her hand stopped halfway to the jewelry box. I watched her face go pale in the mirror's reflection. Watched her fingers grip the dresser edge like she needed it to stay upright. "Oh God," she whispered. Not denial, not confusion. Just those two words, confirming everything I'd been afraid of since Luciana Caldwell's call. Elaine, I can explain, but she didn't. She just sat there, staring at her own reflection. Then explain, please, because I don't understand any of this. It's complicated. Complicated? I heard my voice rise, fought to control it. $450,000 is complicated. 3 months of lying to me is complicated. I wasn't lying. You weren't telling me the truth. What's the difference? She turned then, finally looking at me instead of the mirror. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet, just hovering on the edge. Who else knows about this? I asked. I can't. Who else knows? Brent. Please. Her voice cracked on my name. Just let me handle this, please. Handle what? What is this money for? Where did it go? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't? She wouldn't look at me. Worse, she couldn't. Does this have something to do with Iris with Grady? Our kids' names felt like weapons. Are they in trouble? No. God, no, they don't know anything about this. But someone does. That's who you've been talking to. On the phone. All these calls you've been hiding. Her silence was confirmation. Elaine. If you're in some kind of trouble, if someone's pressuring you, I said I'll handle it. Her voice had gone flat. Empty. Please, just trust me. Trust you. The laugh that came out felt bitter. You just admitted to taking out a loan for nearly $500,000 and won't tell me why. You've been lying to me for months. I haven't been lying. Then what would you call it? She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold, even though the bedroom was warm. I need you to let me fix this before... She stopped. Before what? Before it gets worse. I stared at her. My wife of 30 years. The woman I'd built a life with, raised children with, grown old beside. And I realized I had no idea who she was anymore. Or maybe worse. I had no idea who she'd been protecting all this time, instead of protecting us. I have a meeting at the bank tomorrow, I said quietly. 9 o'clock. They want to talk to me about this loan you won't explain. Her face went even paler. Don't, she whispered. Please don't go. Why not? Because... She shook her head. Just don't. Let me handle this my way. Your way isn't working. Elaine. I turned and left the bedroom, left her standing there looking like I'd struck her. Slept in the guest room that night, or tried to. Mostly, I lay awake listening to the house settle, thinking about $450,000, and the stranger my wife had become. I didn't sleep. Just lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, watching headlights sweep across the walls. At 6:30, I gave up, showered, and left before Elaine came downstairs. I couldn't look at her yet. Not until I knew what I was looking at. The Prosperity Bank Tower rose 43 stories above downtown Houston. All glass and steel and money. I felt every one of my 54 blue-collar years walking through its revolving doors. The lobby smelled like expensive coffee and air conditioning set too cold. Luciana Caldwell met me at the elevator bank on the 28th floor. She was shorter than I'd pictured, maybe 5'3", wearing a navy suit that looked expensive. But her handshake was firm, and her eyes were kind, which somehow made this worse. "Mr. Carlyle, thank you for coming in." She led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there was my machine shop, my normal life. My wife, who'd apparently stopped being who I thought she was sometime in March. Luciana set a folder on the table between us. Thick. Too thick. "I'm going to walk you through this methodically," she said. "Stop me anytime you have questions." She opened the folder. The first page was a loan application dated March 15, 2024, 3 months ago. While I was finishing the Exxon contract, and Elaine was planning Easter services, and our life was supposedly exactly what it had always been. $450,000, Luciana said quietly. Commercial investment loan. Structured as a draw account with staged releases. Your wife listed the primary purpose as funding for a commercial property investment project managed by... She paused, watching my face. "Vaughn Prescott, your son-in-law." Vaughn. Married to our daughter Iris for a year now. And he'd somehow convinced my wife to sign for nearly $500,000 without telling me. "Vaughn," I said. The name felt strange in my mouth. Yes. The loan structure allowed for draws against the total amount as project phases required capital. Your wife authorized each release. Luciana turned pages, showing me a timeline. 7 draws total. First release in March, $75,000. The pattern continued through May. Each release followed by transfers to accounts controlled by Mr. Prescott. The final release was 2 weeks ago. I'd spent 35 years reading technical drawings to tolerances of 1/1000th of an inch. These numbers didn't add up any better than a bad blueprint. Where did the money go? That's what concerns us. Luciana pulled out bank statements with highlighted lines. Each draw release was followed within 48 hours by wire transfers out of the project account. We've traced them to 3 different accounts, all controlled by Mr. Prescott. She slid the statements across to me. The numbers blurred together, but the pattern was clear. Money in, money out. Fast. What kind of commercial property investment needs money that quickly? That's an excellent question, Luciana said. One we've been asking ourselves. And my wife signed off on all of this. Luciana turned to a section tabbed with yellow sticky notes. Authorization forms, 6 of them, spread across 3 months. And there, on every single page, was Elaine's signature, her handwriting. That distinctive E with the loop she'd written on birthday cards and grocery lists for 3 decades. Right there. Authorizing nearly $500,000 to flow to our son-in-law. March, April, May, June. 4 separate times she'd signed papers, released money, and never said a word to me. "I don't understand," I said. But that wasn't quite true. I was starting to understand. I just didn't want to. "Mr. Carlyle, I need to ask you something directly. Did you have any knowledge of this loan before yesterday's phone call?" "No." "Did you discuss any commercial investment opportunity with your son-in-law?" "No." "I barely know what Vaughn does for work. Investment advisor, he says. Works from home mostly." Luciana nodded like I'd confirmed something she already suspected. The bank requires spousal notification for loans of this size when the collateral involves jointly owned property. Your home in Deer Park is listed as secondary collateral. The room tilted slightly. My house. The loan officer who processed this should have required your signature. That didn't happen. When our audit flagged the disbursement pattern and I started reviewing the file, I realized we had a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where either your wife committed fraud by misrepresenting the loan's purpose and hiding it from you, or someone manipulated her into signing without fully understanding what she was authorizing. I stared at the signatures again. Elaine's hand, steady and clear on every line, not shaky, not forged. Her. Which do you think it is? I asked. Luciana was quiet for a moment. Based on the phone conversations I've had with your wife over the past week, I think someone convinced her this was necessary. I think she's protecting someone. Vaughn. Or your daughter. Or both. How do you live with someone for 30 years and not see them sign away your future? I looked out the window at Houston spreading below us. Millions of people living their normal Wednesday mornings, not discovering that their wives had secretly funneled $500,000 to their son-in-law. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you. The bank is investigating the disbursements. If we determine the loan was obtained through misrepresentation or fraud, we can potentially void portions of it. But that would require full cooperation from you and your wife. And if Elaine won't cooperate, then you might need to make some difficult decisions about protecting your own assets. I gathered the papers she'd shown me, tried to hand them back. She shook her head. Keep them. You'll need copies for whatever comes next. I stood to leave, the folder heavy in my hands. At the door, I turned back. Why didn't you just send this information by mail? Luciana met my eyes. Because the person I needed to see was you, not your wife. And I needed to see your face when you realized you didn't know about any of this. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. The manila envelope on the passenger seat like evidence at a crime scene. Which maybe it was. I made the call from my truck before I even pulled out of the bank parking garage. Hugh Redmond answered on the second ring the way he always had for 33 years. You got time for coffee? I asked. Now. There was a pause. Hugh had known me since 1991, back when we were both young men trying to make something of ourselves in Houston's industrial district. He could hear things in silence that most people missed in conversation. The usual place, he said. 20 minutes. The coffee shop sat between a welding supply warehouse and a machine parts distributor. The kind of place that served coffee in thick ceramic mugs and didn't apologize for the wear on the vinyl booths. Hugh was already there when I arrived, sitting in our regular spot by the window, his back to the wall. Old habit from the Navy, he'd told me once. Always know who's coming through the door. Hugh Redmond, 56 years old, had worked alongside me at the Deer Park refinery for 2 decades before taking a supervisor position at a competing plant. He had the kind of face that showed every one of its 56 years honestly, like well-used tools that never pretended to be new. And he'd never learned to soften bad news, which was exactly why I'd called him first. I slid into the booth across from him. The waitress brought coffee without asking. You look like hell, Hugh said. $450,000, I said. My wife signed for it in March, and I just found out yesterday. Hugh's expression didn't change, but his hand stopped halfway to his coffee cup. That's a specific number. Commercial loan, Prosperity Bank. Elaine's signature on every authorization page. For what? That's the question, isn't it? I pulled out the folder Luciana had given me, spread the key pages across the table between us. The money went to Vaughn, my son-in-law Vaughn. Hugh was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers. Then he looked up at me with something in his eyes I didn't like. Vaughn Prescott, he said, not a question. You know something. Brent, I'm going to tell you something I heard about 5 years back, before he married your Iris. My chest tightened. What? Word was Vaughn had some money problems at that investment firm he worked at. Nothing criminal, as far as I heard. But he left real quiet, the kind of quiet that means someone asked him to leave. I stared at Hugh. We'd been friends for 3 decades. He'd been at both my kids' weddings. He'd known about Vaughn's history for years and never said anything. Why didn't you tell me this before? Before what? Before he married Iris. Hugh shrugged. I heard it third hand from a guy whose cousin worked at the same firm. Could have been gossip. Could have been nothing. You gonna tell your daughter not to marry someone because of rumors? If the rumors were about money problems, yeah. Maybe. Would she have listened? I thought about Iris at 25. Young and in love. Bringing Vaughn home for Sunday dinners. How she'd looked at him like he'd hung the moon. How Elaine had whispered to me in the kitchen that Iris finally seemed happy after that disaster with her previous boyfriend. 2 years ago, when Iris brought Vaughn home, I'd shaken the man's hand and thought, finally, someone successful enough for my daughter. He had the right words, the right clothes, the right smile. Investment advisor, he'd said. Worked with private clients, helped them grow their portfolios. I'd never thought to ask, successful at what, exactly? What kind of money problems? I asked Hugh. The details were fuzzy, something about client accounts, discrepancies in projections, nothing anyone could prove, which is probably why he wasn't prosecuted. But the firm didn't want the liability, so they let him resign quietly. Client accounts, I repeated. Like the 3 accounts Luciana had traced. Like the money flowing out within 48 hours of each draw release. You think he's running the same game on your family that got him fired? I think my wife has been signing papers she didn't understand. Releasing money to a man with a history of financial misconduct. And I've been too busy working overtime to notice. Hugh drank his coffee, giving me space to process. The coffee shop smelled like burnt grounds and fry oil, familiar and grounding. Outside the window, a delivery truck backed into a loading bay with the beep, beep, beep of its reverse warning. What's Elaine say about all this? Hugh asked finally. She won't talk about it. Begged me not to go to the bank meeting. When I confronted her about the loan, she said to let her handle it. Handle what? That's what I don't know. But Luciana the banker, she said something. She thinks Elaine's protecting someone. Vaughn. Or Iris. Or both. I looked down at Elaine's signature, that familiar E with its distinctive loop. Hugh, I never asked questions. When Vaughn showed up. When he married my daughter. When they bought that house in Kingwood that seemed too expensive for a guy who works from home. I just accepted it. Wanted Iris to be happy. You trusted your daughter's judgment. I was lazy. The words tasted bitter. I should have done basic due diligence. Should have asked where his clients were. What his snack record was. Why a successful investment advisor in his early 30s was single and available. But I didn't want to be the suspicious father-in-law. Didn't want to make Iris think I didn't trust her choices. Hugh leaned forward, elbows on the scarred laminate table. You trusted the wrong person, old friend. But it wasn't your wife. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Elaine hadn't betrayed me. She'd been manipulated by someone who'd had 4 years to learn exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which family bonds to weaponize. What do I do now? I asked. Now you figure out what Vaughn's actually done with that money. And you figure out how to protect Iris before she realizes she married a con artist. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder. My hands were steady, but something inside me had shifted. The anger that had been diffuse, scattered across confusion and hurt, was crystallizing into something focused and cold. Vaughn Prescott had brought financial problems into my family 4 years ago, wearing a wedding ring and a smile. And I'd been too trusting, too comfortable, too damn polite to see it. I drove home from Hughes with my anger focused like a laser now, no longer scattered. Vaughn Prescott had a history, and I'd been too polite to ask about it. That ended tonight. Grady's name lit up my phone at 7:30 that evening. And for the first time in years, I almost didn't answer my own son's call. But habit won out. "Hey, Dad." "Grady, what's up?" There was a pause. The kind that meant he was choosing words carefully. My son, 26 years old, warehouse supervisor at a logistics company, had learned early that his father didn't appreciate beating around the bush. "Dad, I need to talk to you about Vaughn. I've been seeing some things that don't sit right with me." My hand tightened on the steering wheel. "What kind of things?" "Small stuff, mostly. But it's adding up. Like, he borrowed money from my buddy Marcus back in March and never paid it back. $500. And then there's the way he acts at family dinners. Always talking about his investments, but when I ask specifics, he changes the subject. March. The word hit me like a punch. The same month Elaine signed the loan papers. How much did you say he borrowed? $500. But Dad, that's not the point. Grady, I appreciate your concern for your sister, but I've got bigger things to deal with right now. Another pause. Longer this time. Bigger than Vaughn, Dad, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I think those bigger things and what I'm seeing are connected. How many times can you tell your own son, "I'll handle it," before you realize you're not handling anything at all? Son, I'll handle it. Trust me. You keep saying that, but I've got information you don't have. I'm working on it. Silence on the other end. Then, okay, Dad. But if you need help, I'll call you, I promise. I hung up feeling like I'd just failed a test I didn't know I was taking. Grady had been watching Vaughn. Tried to tell me, and I'd brushed him off because his $500 anecdote seemed trivial compared to the nearly $500,000 loan. Except it wasn't trivial. It was March. The same month Elaine signed those papers. Elaine wasn't in the living room when I got home. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at Iris's tonight. Need some space." I crumpled the note, then immediately felt guilty and smoothed it out again. Space. After 30 years of marriage, my wife needed space from me because I'd discovered she'd signed away our financial future. The house felt too quiet. At 11:45, I gave up pretending I could sleep and went to my home office. The desk lamp created a small pool of light in the dark house. I pulled out our joint checking statements going back 6 months. Elaine's personal checking, the credit cards we shared, spread them across the desk like evidence. 35 years measuring metal to tolerances of 1/1000th of an inch, and I'd missed a pattern running through my own household accounts for 6 months. January 18th. Transfer from joint checking to Elaine's personal account, $800. Memo line, household expenses. February 3rd. Another transfer, $1,200. Same memo. February 27th, $650. March 15th. The loan signing. I grabbed a calculator, started adding. The pre-loan transfers totaled $2,650. Not enough to wreck us, but enough to notice if you were looking, which I hadn't been. I pulled up Elaine's personal checking statements online, entering her password from the sticky note in her desk drawer. The transfers I'd found were just the beginning. Each transfer from our joint account was followed within a week by a cash withdrawal from her personal account. $800 at a Bank of America ATM on January 23rd. $1,200 split across 2 days in early February. $650 on March 1st. Different ATM locations. Different branches. Different neighborhoods. Almost like someone was being careful not to create a trackable pattern. But there was a pattern. My machinist's brain saw it even if Vaughn thought he was being clever. The amounts weren't random. They were just under the reporting threshold. Nothing large enough to trigger automatic fraud alerts. Systematic. Methodical. Planned. I opened a new document and started building a timeline. January 18, $800 transfer. January 23, $800 cash withdrawal. February 3, $1,000 transfer. February 7-8, $200 cash withdrawal split. February 27, $650 transfer. March 1, $650 cash withdrawal. March 15, $450,000 loan signed. The pattern was clear now. Someone had been testing the system, seeing if Elaine would move money without questioning it. Small amounts first, building up her compliance. And then, when she'd proven she would do it, when she'd crossed that line enough times that one more didn't seem like a big deal, then came the real ask, the big one, the loan. Grady had said March. Marcus. $500. I hadn't let him finish the sentence. My son had been trying to tell me that Vaughn was borrowing money from friends in the same month that he convinced my wife to sign for nearly $500,000. And I'd told him I was handling it. I wasn't handling anything. I was playing catch-up to a con artist who'd been running plays on my family since at least January. Maybe longer. I circled the dates with a red pen. January 18, February 3, February 27, March 15. 4 dates. 4 times someone had used my wife while I'd been too busy running tolerances on aluminum to notice the pattern running through my own kitchen. 4 times I could have stopped this if I'd been paying attention. 4 times I'd failed. I sat at that desk until dawn, circling dates and building timelines, watching the pattern of my own blindness sketch itself across 6 months of bank statements. By 8 a.m., I was calling Hugh for an attorney referral. By 9, I was walking into Celeste Thornton's downtown office. I'd never hired an attorney in my life. Never needed one in 54 years of doing things the honest way. And walking into that 15th floor office felt like admitting I'd lost control of my own family. Celeste Thornton, 51 years old, rose from behind a desk with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Houston. She had short silver hair and the kind of sharp-eyed precision that came from seeing enough shell companies to recognize the pattern in her sleep. Hugh had said she practiced commercial fraud and asset protection law. "Mr. Carlyle, Hugh Redmond speaks highly of you." We shook hands. Hers was firm. "I appreciate you seeing me on short notice." "Hugh said it was urgent. Tell me what's happening." I laid it out methodically. The bank call from Luciana, the loan signed in March, Elaine's signature on every authorization page. The money flowing to Vaughn within 48 hours of each release. The pattern of smaller transfers going back to January. The timeline showing systematic escalation. Celeste took notes on a legal pad. She didn't interrupt once. Just let me talk until I ran out of facts. Then she set her pen down and looked at me directly. "Mr. Carlyle, before we discuss the loan itself, tell me about your wife's behavior since this started. Not what she did, how she's been." The question caught me off guard. How she's been. Her emotional state. When you confronted her about the loan, how did she react? I thought about Elaine going pale in our bedroom, gripping the dresser edge. The way she'd begged me to let her handle it, the note saying she needed space. "Scared," I said finally. "She's been scared." "But I thought—" "You thought she was hiding guilt," Celeste said. "What if she's hiding something else?" "Like what?" "Like fear. Real fear. Has she been avoiding your son-in-law? Or has she been in contact with him?" I opened my mouth to answer, then realized I didn't know. Elaine had been staying at Iris's house. Whether Vaughn was there, I had no idea. "I don't know," I admitted. Celeste set her pen down and looked at me directly. "You're building a case against your wife in your head. Stop. Build a timeline instead." The words hit harder than they should have. "When someone won't explain their actions," she continued, "it triggers suspicion. That's natural, but there are 2 very different reasons why people refuse to explain. Either they're hiding what they did, or they're hiding what was done to them. You think Elaine's a victim? I think the behavior you're describing, the fear, the evasion, the plea to handle it herself, doesn't match someone who willingly conspired to commit fraud. It matches someone under duress, when someone won't explain. I realized it doesn't always mean they're hiding what they did. Sometimes they're hiding what was done to them. Under duress, I repeated. You mean Vaughn threatened her? Possibly. Or manipulated her. Or convinced her she was protecting someone. Maybe your daughter. People can be coerced without explicit threats, especially when family is involved. I thought about Iris, about how much Elaine loved our daughter, how fiercely she'd always protected her. If Vaughn had convinced Elaine that signing those papers was protecting Iris somehow, what do I do? Celeste picked up her pen again. First, we need the complete loan file. As guarantor on jointly owned property used as collateral, you have a legal right to request it. Every page, every signature, every disbursement record. Luciana already showed you highlights. I want everything. The application, the supporting documents, any correspondence, any notes from loan officers. If there's evidence of coercion or misrepresentation, it'll be in there. And then we determine whether your wife needs a criminal defense attorney or if she's been victimized by someone who does. The distinction hung in the air between us. What's the difference legally? Enormous. If Elaine knowingly participated in a scheme to defraud the bank, that's conspiracy. If she was manipulated or threatened into signing documents she didn't fully understand, that's different. Intent matters. Understanding matters. Fear matters. She's my wife, I said. 30 years. I should know which one it is. Should you? Celeste's voice was gentle but firm. Mr. Carlyle. The people who do this, the Vaughns of the world, they're professionals at creating exactly the confusion you're feeling. They isolate their victims. They create situations where telling the truth feels more dangerous than lying. They weaponize family bonds. For the first time since Luciana's call, I felt something besides dread, the fragile, dangerous possibility of hope. How long to get the full file? I'll request it today. The bank has 72 hours to comply, but given Luciana's already cooperating, I'd expect it sooner. 2, maybe 3 days. And I shouldn't talk to Elaine until we see it. I strongly recommend you don't confront anyone, including your wife, until we have all the facts. Right now you have pieces. We need the whole picture. I stood to leave. Celeste walked me to the door. Mr. Carlyle, one more thing. There's a real difference under the law and under any decent understanding of fairness. Someone who helped divert funds is not the same as someone who got used by a person they trusted. The behavior you've described suggests the latter, but we need to prove it. Walking out into the Houston heat, I carried her leather folder containing intake notes and one sentence that kept looping through my mind. Someone who got used by a person they trusted. Elaine had been scared, not defensive. Scared of what? I still didn't know. But by tomorrow, the full loan file would arrive, and it would tell me whether my wife was protecting Vaughn or protecting herself. The email from Celeste's office arrived at 10:47 p.m. on Sunday. Subject line reading, "Confidential, loan file, Carlyle." And I clicked the secure link knowing that whatever hope the attorney had given me was about to be tested against evidence. The PDF was 247 pages. I downloaded it, printed nothing yet, and started reading, the way I'd read technical specifications for 35 years. Methodically, completely, notation every detail. Page 1, Commercial Loan Application. Prosperity Bank. Borrower, Elaine Marie Carlyle. Application date March 15, 2024. 3 months ago. Requested amount, $450,000. Purpose investment capital for Vaughn Prescott Investment Development, LLC. I kept reading. The loan wasn't structured as a single lump sum. It was set up as a draw account with staged releases tied to project milestones. Smart, from a banking perspective. Less risk if you only release money as progress is verified. Except there was no real project, so the milestones were fiction. Draw release schedule. Release 1, March 21, 2024, $75,000. Release 2, March 28, 2024, $60,000. Release 3, April 8, 2024, $85,000. Release 4, April 19, 2024, $55,000. Release 5, April 30, 2024, $70,000. Release 6, May 14, 2024, $55,000. Release 7, May 29, 2024, $50,000. Total, $450,000 over 70 days. Each release had its own section in the file. Authorization form signed by Elaine. Bank transfer confirmation. And then, buried in the supporting documents Celeste had demanded, wire transfer records showing what happened next. Reading fraud documentation felt like inspecting failed welds. You could see exactly where the metal gave way, exactly where someone's hand had applied force in the wrong place at the wrong angle. Release 1, $75,000. Authorized March 21st. Wire transfer March 23rd. 41 hours later, moving $52,000 to an account registered to VP Investments, LLC. Another $15,000. The remaining $8,000 stayed in the project account. Release 2. $60,000, authorized March 28th. Wire transfer March 30th, 38 hours later, $43,000 to VP Investments. $12,000 to Prescott Capital. Remainder $5,000. The pattern was identical across all 7 releases. Money authorized by Elaine, released by the bank, then immediately siphoned to accounts controlled by Vaughn. The precision was undeniable. 24 to 48 hours, every single time. I pulled up a calculator and started adding. Of the total amount authorized, transferred to VP Investments, LLC, $174,000. Transferred to Prescott Capital Management, $89,000. Transferred to Prescott Holdings, Inc., $37,000 remaining in project account. $150,000, 3 different company names, all registered to Vaughn Prescott, according to Luciana's notes in the file. The money that stayed in the project account was probably there to make everything look legitimate if anyone checked. A shell game, leaving just enough to seem real. But it was the authorization forms that kept pulling me back. Page 47. Draw Release 3 authorization. Signature line, Elaine M. Carlisle. That distinctive E with the loop she'd written on birthday cards for our kids. On grocery lists. On the mortgage papers when we bought this house. Page 68. Draw Release 4 authorization. Same signature. Page 91. Draw Release 5 authorization. Same signature. Each one a small, familiar betrayal written in blue ink. I cross-referenced dates with our joint calendar. The one Elaine kept on the kitchen wall. Release 1 fell on a day marked Ladies' Bible Study, 7 p.m. Release 3 landed on Iris's birthday dinner. Release 6 matched church fundraiser meeting. Ordinary life, printed right over the top of each betrayal. 7 times over 70 days. Elaine had signed papers releasing money to Vaughn, and then she'd gone to Bible study, gone to our daughter's birthday dinner, gone to the dentist and church meetings and garden club like nothing was happening. Celeste's voice echoed in my head. There's a difference between someone who helped divert funds and someone who got used by a person they trusted. I set the pages down, then picked them back up, as if reading the signatures a second time might change what they said. But how do you sign away $500,000 7 times and claim you were forced? How do you look that person in the eye afterward and say nothing for 3 months? I kept reading. The bank had included email correspondence in the file. Messages between Elaine and the loan officer, a woman named Patricia Hendricks who'd processed the application. March 19th. Patricia to Elaine. Your first draw release is approved. Please come in tomorrow to sign the authorization. March 19th. Elaine to Patricia. Thank you. I'll be there at 10 a.m. April 7th. Patricia to Elaine. Draw Release 3 is ready for your signature. Can you come in this afternoon? April 7th. Elaine to Patricia. Yes, 2:30 works for me. No hesitation in the emails. No questions. Just efficient coordination of the next release, the next signature, the next transfer to Vaughn. I wanted to find something, anything, that looked like coercion. A mention of pressure, of fear, of someone forcing her hand. But there was nothing except Elaine's calm, polite cooperation with the systematic theft of our future. At page 198, I found Vaughn's supporting documentation for the loan application. Business plan for Prescott Investment Development, LLC. A 5-page fantasy about commercial property acquisition and development in the Houston suburbs. Projected returns, timeline, risk analysis, all fiction. But professional-looking fiction. And then, on page 203, I found the personal guarantee section. The part where Elaine had pledged our house in Deer Park as secondary collateral. Our home. 30 years of mortgage payments. The place where we'd raised Iris and Grady. Where Elaine had painted the kitchen twice and I'd rebuilt the back deck. The address that meant stability, meant family, meant everything we'd built together. She'd signed it away as backup collateral for her son-in-law's con game. I closed the laptop at 1:34 a.m. and sat in the dark. The desk lamp creating a small pool of light in the silent house. 7 signatures. 7 times money had vanished to Vaughn within 48 hours. Celeste's framework said victim. But victims don't sign 7 separate authorizations over 3 months without once saying stop. I printed the 7 authorization pages at 4 in the morning, and by 6:15 I was already sitting at the kitchen table when Elaine came downstairs. The pages were laid out in chronological order between us like autopsy photos. She saw them before she saw me. Stopped in the doorway, one hand going to her throat. Brent. I didn't say anything. Just watched her face go from surprised to pale, to something that looked like resignation. She walked to the table slowly and stood there staring down at her own signature repeated across 7 pages. Her handwriting. That distinctive E with the loop I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists for 30 years. March through May. 7 times, totaling nearly $500,000. I got the full loan file, I said quietly. All 247 pages, including the part where you pledged our house as collateral. Elaine's knees seemed to give way. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down hard, her hands flat on the table like she needed it to stay upright. I can explain, but her voice broke on the word. 7 times. Elaine, you signed 7 times between March and May, and you never said a word to me. She didn't defend herself, didn't deny anything. She just looked at those pages, and something in her collapsed like a building finally giving way to structural failure. 30 years of marriage came down to this. A kitchen table, 7 pieces of paper, and my wife's hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold the pages I'd given her. He said it was to help Iris, she whispered. Help Iris how? Her marriage. Vaughn came to me in March. He said he needed help, that he'd made some bad investments, and if I didn't help him, if the money problems came out, the marriage would fall apart. So you gave him $500,000. Not all at once. He said it was temporary, that the first draw would get him through the immediate crisis, and then each additional release would cover him until his investments recovered. He had spreadsheets, projections, documents. And you believed him. I believed he loved our daughter. Her voice was barely audible. I believed that protecting their marriage was worth lying to me for 3 months. She looked up at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen there before. Not guilt. Fear. Pure, exhausted fear. He said I couldn't tell you, that you'd confront him, that you'd make it worse, that if I went to you, if I told you what was happening, you'd force it all out into the open, and Iris would find out her husband was failing financially, and the marriage would end, and it would be my fault. Quietly. The word tasted bitter. You call this quiet? I call it trying to protect our daughter from getting divorced at 29 because her husband had money problems. Tears were running down her face now. I thought I was buying him time to fix it. I thought each signature was one more month of Iris not knowing. 7 signatures. Elaine, April 8th was Iris's birthday. You signed papers that day releasing $85,000 to Vaughn. Then you went to our daughter's birthday dinner and smiled and pretended everything was fine. I was trying to keep everything fine. Her voice rose for the first time. I was trying to keep our daughter's marriage together. Trying to give Vaughn the help he said he needed. Why couldn't you tell me? In 30 years, why couldn't you just tell me? Elaine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because Vaughn said you wouldn't understand. That you'd see it as betrayal instead of help. That you'd never agree to put our house up as collateral for his business problems. He was right about that. I know. She looked down at the signatures again. I know that now. But when he was sitting in our living room in March, crying about how much he loved Iris and how ashamed he was about the money, and how he just needed help to get through this rough patch, I believed him. Brent. I believed that keeping his secret was protecting our daughter. What could Vaughn have said that would make protecting a marriage mean destroying one? Did Iris know? I asked. No, God, no. That was the whole point. Keep it from her until Vaughn fixed it. Then she'd never have to know her husband had been in trouble. Except he didn't fix it. He took the money and transferred it to his own accounts within 48 hours of every single release. That's not a man trying to save his investments. Elaine, that's a man stealing from us. She pressed her hands over her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I don't know how to explain what he made me believe, she said through her fingers. Every time I signed, it felt like I was saving Iris. Every time I went to the bank, I told myself this was the last one. This would fix it, and then I could tell you after it was over. But it didn't work out. No. Her voice was broken. No, it didn't. I stood up. Couldn't sit there anymore looking at her crying over the evidence of what she'd done. I have to go to work. Brent, please. I don't know what to say to you right now. Elaine, I don't know how to process that my wife of 30 years thought protecting our son-in-law's secrets was more important than trusting her own husband. I left her there at the kitchen table, the 7 pages still spread out in front of her like an accusation she couldn't answer. All day at the shop, running jobs through the CNC mill. Her 4 words kept looping through my mind. To help Iris's marriage. Help it how? Save it from what? And why would helping their daughter mean hiding $500,000 from me? Elaine's words haunted me all day. To help Iris's marriage. By 3 p.m. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to hear Vaughn's version myself. Needed to look my son-in-law in the eye and ask what he'd said to my wife that made her sign away our future. I drove to Kingwood without calling ahead. The house was a 2-story modern build that screamed new money. Pristine landscaping and a black Mercedes in the driveway that cost more than I made in a year. For a guy with liquidity problems bad enough to need $500,000 from his mother-in-law, Vaughn wasn't living like it. Vaughn answered the door within seconds. 37 years old, tall, athletic, wearing expensive-looking clothes, a fitted polo and tailored chinos. His smile was immediate and warm, the kind politicians practice in mirrors. "Brent," he said, like I'd been expected. "I wondered when you'd come." "We need to talk," Of course. Come in. Iris is at yoga, won't be back for another hour. He stepped aside. Can I get you something? Coffee, water? No. He led me to a sitting area off the kitchen. Marble countertops, stainless steel appliances that gleamed like they'd never been used. The whole place had that staged quality of magazine spreads. 2 years ago, when Iris first brought Vaughn home, I'd thought, finally, someone successful enough for my daughter. Independent investment advisor, he'd said. He'd been charming, deferential. I should have asked more questions then. So, Vaughn said, settling into an armchair. Elaine told you about the loan. You borrowed $450,000 using my wife's signature, against our house, without telling me. I can see how that would be upsetting from your perspective. From my perspective. Like there was another angle where this made sense. Explain it to me. Vaughn, why did you need that money? Temporary liquidity issue, he said smoothly. You understand how investment portfolios work. Sometimes you have capital tied up in positions that are performing well long-term, but create short-term cash flow challenges. The markets were volatile in Q1, and I needed bridge financing. He said it like he was explaining something to a child. So you went to my wife, in secret. Not exactly secret. Vaughn leaned forward. I actually discussed it with Iris first. She was the one who suggested asking her mother for help. Family supporting family. You know, the words hit like a physical blow. Iris knew. My daughter had known about this. Iris suggested this. She trusts me, Brent. Trusts that I know how to manage our finances, build our future. When I explained the situation, she understood immediately. Said her mother would want to help if it meant protecting our stability. Protecting. There was that word again. You told my wife this was about helping Iris's marriage. Well, it was. Vaughn spread his hands. Financial stress destroys marriages. I'm sure you know that. If word got out that I was having liquidity issues, it would have damaged my reputation, hurt my business. Elaine understood that. She was protecting her daughter's future. I wanted to hit him. When will you pay it back? November. Q4 should bring several liquidity events. I'll have full repayment by Thanksgiving, probably earlier. Why not use a traditional lender? Vaughn stood, walked to a built-in bar, and pulled out a bottle of bourbon. He held it up, offering. I shook my head. This is from 1970, he said, pouring himself 2 fingers. Your birth year. Right. Iris mentioned that. The detail was small, but chilling. He'd studied me, prepared for this conversation. Traditional lenders ask uncomfortable questions, he continued. I prefer to keep family matters private. Between us, you understand? No. I don't understand. Why couldn't you come to me directly? Could I have... Vaughn took a sip, watching me over the glass. Honestly, Brent, would you have agreed to put up your house as collateral for my business needs? No. Exactly. Elaine understood that. She knew you'd say no, and she knew that saying no would create family tension we were trying to avoid. Better to handle it quietly. Get through the rough patch, pay everything back before you even knew there was an issue. Except I found out. Yes. Unfortunate timing with the bank's audit. But nothing's changed. The repayment timeline holds. Everything will be made whole by November. He said it with such confidence, such absolute certainty, that for a moment I almost believed him. Iris has been stressed lately, Vaughn said, voice softening. Her mother's worry is affecting her. I hope we can resolve this without adding more tension to the household. For Iris's sake. There it was, the subtle threat wrapped in concern. You and Elaine have your own arrangement to manage, he added. I trust you'll handle that privately. I heard a car door slam outside. Vaughn glanced toward the window. That'll be Iris. Probably best if we continue this another time. No need to upset her with business talk. He was on his feet, walking me to the door before I could respond. "I'll send over some documentation," he said. "Put your mind at ease about the repayment schedule." Iris came through the door as I reached it, yoga mat over her shoulder, face flushed from exercise. She lit up when she saw me. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "Just stopped by," I managed. She kissed Vaughn on the cheek, and he smiled at her with what looked like genuine affection. I left them standing there in their expensive foyer, in my truck. I sat watching through the window. Vaughn wasn't watching me leave. He was already on his phone, head thrown back laughing at something. Not a trace of stress or concern in his body language. The complete absence of fear was more disturbing than any threat could have been. I drove away from Kingwood with Vaughn's laugh still ringing in my ears. That complete absence of fear more disturbing than any threat. Whatever game he was playing, he was several steps ahead of me. Iris would tell me all of this months later, piecing together for me what happened behind that closed bedroom door while I was driving home from Kingwood. What I didn't know that afternoon was that she had never seen her husband pace before. She came home from yoga at 6:30 to find him in their bedroom, phone clutched in one hand, moving back and forth across the carpet like a caged animal. The smooth confidence he'd shown me an hour earlier had cracked into something raw. He spun toward her, and for just a second his face was tight with stress before the practiced smile slid back into place. "Hey, babe. Good class." "What's wrong? Dad said he stopped by." "Yeah. Just, business complications. Nothing I can't handle." But he didn't look like he was handling it. His jaw was tight, and he kept glancing at his phone like he was waiting for something. Did something happen with Dad? Just the usual father-in-law concern about finances. You know how he is. Vaughn tried to pull her into a hug, but the gesture felt wrong somehow. Stiff. Iris stepped back. "You don't look like you're handling it." "I'm fine. Just need to make a few calls. Smooth some things over." His phone rang. No name on the caller ID, just a number. Vaughn glanced at it, then at Iris. "I should take this. Work thing." He walked out onto the back patio, sliding the glass door closed behind him. Iris stood in the kitchen, watching through the glass as her husband paced with the phone pressed to his ear. His free hand was gesturing sharply, the way it did when he was frustrated. She couldn't hear the words clearly, just fragments. "Need more time. Told you November. 3 months away. Can't liquidate that fast without flags." Iris realized she'd never questioned Vaughn's business before. Always trusted blindly, the way her mother had taught her. Marriage should work. Don't pry into your husband's work. Let him handle the finances. Support. Don't interrogate. But watching him through the glass, seeing body language she didn't recognize, defensive, almost pleading, something cold settled in her stomach. Vaughn came back inside, the smooth mask back in place. "Work stress," he said. "Market volatility. Nothing to worry about." "Vaughn, Mom's been acting strange lately. Dad showing up here unannounced. Is this about money?" "Your parents worry too much." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that usually made her feel protected but now felt patronizing. "Let me handle the business side. That's my job, right? You focus on your students. I focus on investments. We're married. It's our business." "Of course." He pulled her close again. "But I don't want you stressed about portfolio rebalancing and liquidity events. It's boring, technical stuff. How about we order Thai food and watch that show you wanted to see? Forget about work for the night." Classic Vaughn. Deflect with affection. Change the subject. Make her feel like worrying was the problem instead of whatever he was hiding. Iris let him order the food. Let him pick the show. Let him act like everything was normal. But that cold feeling in her stomach didn't go away. The next morning, my phone rang while I was driving to work. Grady's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. still frustrated from our last conversation. But habit won out. What? Dad, I saw Vaughn yesterday, meeting someone at the Starbucks in Webster. You're following him now. I was getting coffee. He was there. And the guy he was with, Dad, he looked wrong. Expensive suit, but the kind of guy who makes you check your wallet still there. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My family was spinning away from me on separate orbits, everyone thinking they knew better, everyone interfering. Grady, this isn't helpful. What isn't helpful is you sticking your head in the sand. This guy had a briefcase, was leaning across the table all intense. Vaughn looked scared. Dad, actually scared. I talked to Vaughn yesterday. He explained everything. It's a liquidity issue with his investments. He's got a repayment plan. And you believed him? Grady's voice rose. Dad, wake up! This guy is playing you! Stay out of it. I mean it. Someone needs to watch him. You're too close to see what's really happening. I'm handling it. Grady, I don't need you playing detective and making things worse. Making things worse. How is paying attention making things worse? Because you're going to spook him. And then whatever arrangement we have falls apart. I've got this under control. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're letting this guy rob your family while you pretend everything's fine. I hung up. Couldn't listen to my son tell me I was failing to protect my own family. None of them knew the others were awake to the same danger, circling the same truth from different angles. Pride and protection keeping them silent. That morning, 3 people sat alone with the same fear. Iris stared at her phone in the teacher's lounge before first bell, debating whether to call her mother, ask about the strange behavior, the worry Vaughn had mentioned. But what would she say? My husband took a phone call, and it made me uncomfortable. Grady sat in his truck outside the building where Vaughn claimed to have an office. The address from a business card he'd found months ago. His father had told him to stay out of it. He wasn't going to. I pulled into the Deer Park refinery parking lot, 40 minutes early for my shift, and sat staring at the dashboard. Vaughn's calm face, Elaine's tears, Grady's warnings. The pieces didn't fit together, but I couldn't see the pattern yet. 3 people. 3 fragments of the same picture. Iris sensing her husband was lying. Grady seeing his brother-in-law meeting dangerous people. Me refusing to admit I was in over my head. The truth was forming. But we were speaking different languages, moving on separate tracks toward the same collision. Luciana's voicemail said urgent 3 times. I stepped out of the production meeting, ignoring the questioning looks from my team. The hallway outside the conference room felt too bright, too exposed. I replayed the message twice, listening to the tension threading through her normally composed voice. Brent, it's Luciana Caldwell. I need you to call me back immediately. It's urgent. There's been a development with your loan file. Please call as soon as you get this. It's urgent. That last urgent came after a pause, like she'd almost hung up before deciding she hadn't stressed it enough. I called her direct line. She answered before the first ring finished. Can you come to the bank? She asked. Now? What happened? Not over the phone. How quickly can you get here? 20 minutes later, she met me at a side entrance I'd never used before, leading me through employee corridors to a small conference room in the back. A man in his early 40s sat at the table, suit jacket draped over the chair behind him, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His laptop was already open. Brent Carlisle. This is David Kramer, Luciana said. He's with the bank's fraud investigation unit. David Kramer stood to shake my hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact. 43, maybe 44. With the kind of stillness that came from interviewing liars for a living. His tie was loosened but not removed. Laptop showing what looked like spreadsheets with highlighted cells. Mr. Carlisle, we've placed a hold on the remaining disbursements from your home equity line, David said. As of this morning. $150,000 has been frozen. I sat down slowly. Frozen. Preserved, Luciana corrected. The funds are still there. We stopped them from being released. Why? David turned his laptop toward me. Your son-in-law, Vaughn Prescott, triggered multiple fraud indicators over the past 6 weeks. Rapid sequential draws. Immediate external transfers. Beneficiary accounts with recent formation dates. When I ran his name through our system yesterday, I found something else. He pulled up a different screen. Vaughn Prescott was flagged in our database 18 months ago. A different bank, Pinnacle Financial in Dallas, submitted an inquiry about suspicious activity on a business line of credit. The investigation was ongoing when the account was closed by the primary borrower. 18 months ago, I repeated. That's 6 months before he married my daughter. Correct. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and rang. You're telling me he was already under investigation when he joined our family. The inquiry never resulted in charges, David said. The account holder declined to pursue it, claimed it was a business dispute. But yes, he was on our watch list before your daughter's wedding. Luciana leaned forward. Brent, the freeze means that money, the remaining $150,000, it's safe. It's still in the line of credit. Vaughn can't touch it. Relief should have flooded through me. Instead, I felt cold. But the other $300,000 is gone. Dispersed to accounts we're currently tracing, David confirmed. The transfers show a pattern we've seen before. Initial funds to legitimate appearing investment entities. Then rapid movement through multiple intermediaries. By the time we freeze one account, the money's already moved to the next. Can you recover it? We're working with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. But I won't lie to you. Mr. Carlisle, recovery rates on cases like this are typically 15 to 20%. Sometimes less. The conference room walls seemed closer than they had 5 minutes ago. What do you need from me? David pulled out a legal pad. Complete timeline of your interactions with Vaughn Prescott. Every conversation about money, investments, financial planning, every mention of business dealings, client names, firms he's worked with, anything your wife or daughter might have told you about his requests or explanations. My wife signed the authorization forms, I said. Is she? We're not investigating your wife, Luciana said quickly. The pattern suggests she was used as an access point, not a willing participant. David's expression stayed neutral. I'll need to interview her separately. And your daughter, Iris. If Vaughn discussed any of this with them, even in passing, it could help us trace where the money went. I started to answer, but David was still talking. There's something else you should know, he said. The Dallas inquiry wasn't the only flag. In the past 2 years, Vaughn Prescott's name has appeared in preliminary investigations at 3 different institutions. None resulted in charges. All were closed after the primary account holders withdrew cooperation. 3 institutions, I said. You're saying... I'm saying this wasn't opportunistic. Your family wasn't targeted because Vaughn saw a chance and took it. This is what he does. The pattern suggests he's been doing it for years. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. How many families? We don't know yet. The investigations were never completed. But based on the amounts involved in the other inquiries, we're looking at potential exposure north of $2 million across multiple victims. $2 million. Multiple victims. Years of practice. I thought about Vaughn sitting in his Kingwood house 3 days ago. Utterly calm. Sipping bourbon like we were discussing golf scores. The way he'd smiled when I threatened to expose him, unhurried, almost amused, like a man watching weather he'd already forecast. He wasn't worried because he's done this before. He knows how to disappear money. He knows how to make victims too embarrassed or exhausted to pursue it. We saved $150,000, Luciana said quietly. That's something, Brent. It was something. But $300,000 was gone. And my son-in-law wasn't a desperate man making a mistake. He was a professional. And my family was just his latest mark. Elaine was already crying when I walked through the door. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cold coffee mug. Mascara streaked down both cheeks. The landline sat in front of her like evidence. "The bank called the house 3 times, she said. "Prosperity Bank. They never call the house." I set my keys down. "No, they don't." "What happened?" I pulled out the chair across from her. The same configuration as every hard conversation in 30 years. The bank's fraud unit froze the remaining disbursements. $150,000. Vaughn can't touch it. Her face didn't change. "And the rest, 300,000 is already gone. Dispersed through accounts they're tracing." She closed her eyes. "Vaughn was flagged for fraud 18 months ago," I said. "Different bank, different victim. He was already on their watch list when he married Iris." Her hands started shaking. The mug rattled against the table. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning," I said. I was trying to protect her. Protect her from what? She looked up. And something in her expression stopped me cold. Not guilt. Relief. "I knew," she whispered. "God help me. I knew something wrong." The kitchen table had witnessed 30 years of our marriage. Breakfast chaos, homework battles, retirement planning. Now it held the weight of our daughter's unraveling life. "Then why did you sign?" I asked. Elaine drew a shaking breath. "He came here when you were at work. May 15th. You had that safety audit that ran until 7. Vaughn came to our house. He said he needed bridge financing. Time sensitive. Asked me specifically, not you. Because women understand family loyalty better." She laughed, bitter. I should have known then. What else? That it had to be me. "You'd asked too many questions. He needed someone who trusted family more than paperwork." "He played you." He made it sound like I'd be helping Iris. Showed me projections, charts. Said the returns would let them buy a bigger house. Start the family she wants. My chest tightened. Iris had been talking about babies for months. "When did you realize it wasn't an investment?" "The second draw." He called me directly. Said there'd been a complication. I asked to talk to Iris first. Elaine's knuckles went white around the mug. He said if I involved Iris, if I told you, if I refused to sign, their marriage would end badly. The words tumbled out fast. Said he'd make it explosive and public, make sure Iris knew I could have prevented it but chose not to. That I valued money more than her happiness. The room tilted. "He threatened to destroy your relationship with our daughter." "He threatened to destroy her." Said he'd leave her. Make it messy enough that everyone would ask why. "Then tell her that her own mother sabotaged the marriage by refusing to help." May 15th. 2 weeks before our anniversary. While I was ordering flowers, Vaughn was threatening my wife in our kitchen. "He made me feel like I was choosing," Elaine said. "Sign and lose money, or refuse and lose Iris." He was so calm, almost kind, like he was doing me a favor. Jesus Christ. I've been so ashamed. Trapped between saving money and saving my daughter. I couldn't tell if the threat was real, but I couldn't risk it. Brent, I couldn't risk her. The anger I'd carried for 3 weeks dissolved. "You're not the criminal here," I said. "He is." I signed 7 authorizations. 7 times I drove to the bank. Every time I thought about stopping, I'd picture Iris's face when she found out I could have saved her marriage but didn't. He smiled when he said it, she added quietly. Like we were allies. Like we both wanted the same thing, protecting Iris, and this was just the cost. I moved around the table. Elaine turned into my arms and broke. 30 years of trust crashing back against 3 weeks of doubt. "I'm sorry I doubted you," I said. I held her the way I hadn't since her mother's funeral. The kind of holding that says words are done. Only presence matters. We stood there while the kitchen darkened around us. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. "Our baby's sleeping next to a monster every night," Elaine said against my shoulder. The words landed like a blow. Iris in Kingwood, 30 minutes away, curled beside a man who'd professionally manipulated her mother, who'd threatened to destroy their family with the same calm smile he probably used to say good morning. "Not for much longer," I said. Elaine pulled back. "How do we tell her she loves him, Brent? What if she doesn't believe us?" "We'll find a way." What if telling her triggers exactly what he threatened? What if he turns it around, makes her think we're trying to destroy her marriage? I didn't have an answer. We stood in the kitchen as evening deepened. Finally on the same side of this war. The relief of that of not fighting each other anymore lasted exactly as long as it took to realize what came next. Iris needed to know the truth before Vaughn realized the walls were closing in. But the man who'd threatened Elaine so calmly wasn't going to let his target slip away quietly. And our daughter, raised to see the best in people, was sleeping 30 minutes away under the same roof as a professional predator. The clock was ticking on her safety, and we had no idea how much time was left. Celeste took one look at us and said, "Tell me everything." We sat across from her in the downtown office, Elaine's hand in mine for the first time in months. The shift wasn't lost on Celeste. She'd seen us 3 weeks ago as a fractured couple, suspicion thick between us. Now we were unified. "Before we discuss strategy, I need Elaine's full statement," Celeste said. She opened a legal pad, pen ready. "I reviewed your email about the bank's fraud freeze. Now I need the context." Elaine's grip tightened on my hand. "Where do I start?" she asked. "May 15th, Celeste said. "Tell me exactly what Vaughn said." Elaine drew a breath and began. "The private meeting while I was at work. Vaughn's request for bridge financing. His insistence that it had to be her, not me. The projections and charts. Then the shift when she'd asked to involve me. When the threat emerged. He said if I refused or told Brent their marriage would end badly," Elaine said. "Explosive and public. He'd make sure Iris knew I could have prevented it." Celeste's pen moved steadily across the page. "Did he specify consequences beyond the marriage threat?" "Implied he'd tell Iris I chose money over her happiness. That I valued dollars more than my daughter's future. And after the first draw, he called me directly for each subsequent authorization. 7 times total. Each time I thought about refusing, he'd remind me what refusing would cost." Elaine's hand shook as she wrote the date on Celeste's affidavit. May 15, 2024. The day her trust became a weapon used against her. "This is coercion," Celeste said, looking up from her notes. "Under Texas contract law. Threats that exploit confidential relationships and target family harm constitute duress. Duress invalidates consent." "We can void the loan?" I asked. Celeste set down her pen. "Possibly. The documented threats specifically targeting Elaine's relationship with Iris create grounds to challenge the signature's validity. If we can prove she signed under coercion, liability shifts entirely to Vaughn." Hope flared in my chest. "But," Celeste continued, $300,000 is already dispersed. Voiding the loan doesn't magically recover funds. That's criminal recovery territory fraud charges. Asset seizure, restitution orders, different timeline, different process." The hope dimmed, but didn't die. "I've already contacted David Kramer at Prosperity Bank," Celeste said. "I'll share Elaine's statement with the fraud unit today. The documented coercion strengthens their criminal referral." "How long do we have?" Elaine asked. "The bank froze funds last Thursday," Celeste said. "They have a 10-day deadline before triggering formal default proceedings. We're 3 days in. 7 days remain until August 3rd. 7 days. A week to dismantle a con that took Vaughn months to construct." 7 days to do what? I asked. Document everything. Coordinate the criminal referral. Protect your assets, Celeste said. We're running 3 parallel tracks. She pulled out a timeline chart, began marking dates and milestones. The precision of it, the structure emerging from chaos, felt like oxygen after drowning. Before I explain the 3-track strategy Celeste laid out, are you still with me? Comment A if you think Iris will believe her parents. Or B if you think she'll defend Vaughn. Add 1 reason why in 5 to 10 words. Quick note, the next part includes some fictionalized details to convey the legal complexity and emotional weight. Mid-story CTA. Track 1 Civil Contract Challenge, Celeste said. We file a motion to void the loan based on documented coercion. Elaine's affidavit, plus bank records showing Vaughn's direct contact pattern, establishes the duress timeline. She marked the first column on her chart. Track 2 Criminal Fraud Coordination. I work with David Kramer to build the fraud case Vaughn's watch list history, the sequential draws, the threat documentation. Bank submits formal referral to FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Second column marked. Track 3 Asset Protection. We file for emergency protective orders on your remaining equity, retirement accounts, anything Vaughn might claim through community property laws during marriage dissolution. Third column. Each track has specific documentation requirements. She continued. Timeline's tight, but manageable if we move fast. Elaine leaned forward. What about Iris? Celeste's expression shifted, less attorney, more human. She needs to know before Vaughn realizes we're moving against him, she said. Once we file the civil motion, it's public record. He'll know within hours. If Iris hears about this from him first, he controls the narrative. When? I asked. This weekend, before Monday, when we file track 1 and track 3 simultaneously. What if she doesn't believe us? Elaine's voice was small. Celeste closed the timeline chart. That's the variable we can't control. You'll have documentation, bank records, my legal assessment, the fraud unit's involvement. But if she's not ready to see it, evidence won't matter. The words hung in the air. There's another risk, Celeste said. Telling Iris may trigger exactly what Vaughn threatened. He could manufacture a crisis, turn her against you, make himself the victim of interfering in-laws. But if we don't tell her, I said, she stays at risk. Exactly. Silence protects her illusions, but leaves her vulnerable. Truth protects her safety, but may destroy her trust in you. How do you tell your daughter her marriage is built on fraud without becoming the villain in her story? We left Celeste's office an hour later with a 3-track legal plan, a 7-day deadline, and a manila folder containing Elaine's affidavit. The elevator descended in silence, Elaine still holding my hand. This weekend, she said as we reached the parking garage. This weekend, I confirmed. We had strategy. We had documentation. We had legal firepower and a fraud investigator and a timeline that made sense on paper. But all the strategy in the world meant nothing if Iris looked at us across the table and chose to believe her husband instead of her parents. If she saw our intervention as betrayal rather than rescue. If Vaughn's 2 years of charm outweighed our 30 years of love. The confrontation couldn't wait much longer. Monday's filings would start the legal avalanche. But first, this weekend, we'd have to choose protect her safety or preserve her illusions. We both knew which choice we'd make. We just didn't know if our daughter would ever forgive us for making it. Celeste's background investigator worked fast. Sunday morning, halfway through breakfast, my phone rang. Celeste's name sent adrenaline through my chest. Is Elaine with you? She asked. Right here. Put me on speaker. You both need to hear this. I set the phone on the kitchen table. Elaine's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. I received the preliminary background investigation on Vaughn Prescott, Celeste said. Her tone was measured. What we found changes the picture without changing our plan. Complicated how? I asked. 2 years ago, Spring 2022. Vaughn invested heavily in a private real estate syndication deal, commercial property in Austin. The deal collapsed when the developer filed bankruptcy. Elaine set down her mug. How heavily? He lost approximately $180,000 of his own capital, plus borrowed another $220,000 from private lenders. Total exposure around $400,000. The number landed like a punch. 400,000, I repeated. Almost exactly what he took from us. The timing matters, Celeste said. Spring 2022 investment collapsed. Fall 2022 he met Iris. Spring 2023 engagement. Summer 2023 marriage. He was already drowning when he met our daughter, Elaine said. Spring 2022. While Vaughn was losing $400,000, Iris was grading second-grade spelling tests. Unaware her future husband existed, the investigator found 3 different creditors pursuing him for repayment. Celeste continued. Demands escalated through 2023, became aggressive early this year. One filed intent to sue in March. Another threatened asset seizure in April. May 15th, Elaine whispered. That's when he came to me. Exactly. He needed $450,000 to settle debts before lawsuits materialized. The investigator traced partial payments to all 3 creditors in late May and June, matching your loan disbursements. Pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. So he's not just a con artist, I said. He's drowning. Both, Celeste said. He made a bad investment, faced real consequences, then chose fraud and manipulation over honesty or bankruptcy. He threatened me to cover his own mistakes, Elaine said. Yes. The investigator found evidence he's been juggling creditor calls, making partial payments, deploying delay tactics for over a year. Your family became his solution. Outside. A car door slammed. Someone's ordinary Sunday while ours unraveled. Does this make him sympathetic? I asked. Desperate instead of evil? Celeste paused. Desperate people make choices, she said. He chose to defraud your family. He chose to threaten Elaine. He chose manipulation over honesty. Fraud over bankruptcy. Your daughter's trust over accountability. Does desperation excuse manipulation? Or does it just explain the mechanism by which good people convince themselves to do terrible things? There's something else, Celeste said. The timeline. Investment fails spring 2022. 6 months later, he meets Iris. 6 months after that, they're engaged. The investigator can't prove intent, but the pattern is suggestive. What possibility? Elaine asked, though her expression said she knew. That Vaughn may have targeted a financially stable family while facing collapse. Your daughter mentions her father's steady refinery job, her parents' paid-off house. For someone drowning in debt, that profile looks like salvation. The kitchen felt smaller. You think he married her for access to money, I said. I think he married her while knowing he'd need money eventually, Celeste said. Whether he loved her genuinely and planned to use her family opportunistically, or whether the entire relationship was calculated, we can't prove either way. But the timeline is damning. Elaine's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He met our daughter 6 months after losing everything. Courted her while creditors circled. Proposed while lawsuits were being drafted. Married her, knowing he'd eventually come for our money. The investigator found no evidence Vaughn disclosed the debt to Iris. Celeste added, no conversations about the failed investment, the creditors, the pressure. He kept her completely in the dark. Fury rose in my chest. Simpler than the complicated understanding trying to take root alongside it. This helps our case, Celeste said, shifting back to pragmatic. Shows a pattern of financial deception. Demonstrates calculated planning rather than impulsive crime. But it doesn't erase the crime or extend our deadline. 5 days left, I said. 5 days until bank default proceedings. Understanding his motive is useful, but August 3rd still stands. And frankly, His desperation makes him more dangerous, not less. When we tell Iris, when we file motions, when he realizes his solution is collapsing, that's when he's most unpredictable. The words settled like cold water. I realized, with something like shock, that I almost pitied him. Almost. But pity doesn't protect Iris from a desperate man's next terrible choice. We still have to tell her, Elaine said. This weekend. Yes, Celeste confirmed. Complexity doesn't grant mercy. 5 days to execute the plan, and the truth you need to tell just got infinitely harder. The call ended. Elaine and I sat in silence. Sunday morning sun streaming through the window, highlighting cold coffee in our mugs. It would be easier if he were just evil, Elaine said finally. Yes. Now we have to tell her that her husband is desperate and manipulative, drowning and dangerous, someone to pity and prosecute simultaneously. I reached for her hand across the table. The picture was complete now. Vaughn wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a failing man who'd chosen fraud over honesty, manipulation over bankruptcy, marriage as lifeline rather than love. Maybe he'd loved Iris genuinely while viewing her family as salvation. Maybe the entire relationship had been calculated. We'd never know his heart, only his actions. And his actions were the only thing that mattered now. 5 days until default. And somewhere in Kingwood, our daughter was making Sunday breakfast for a man who'd married her while drowning, who'd threatened her mother to save himself, who'd chosen her family's destruction over his own accountability. Complexity doesn't grant mercy. We still had to act. Iris knew something was wrong when her mother didn't hug her at the door. Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock. She'd come for pot roast and conversation, the weekly ritual since she moved to Kingwood. But Elaine just stepped back, gestured her inside. What happened? Iris asked. Is someone sick? We're fine, I said. But we need to talk. Living room. Her eyes darted between us. No food cooking, no TV on. The formal setup we'd used when we told her about her grandmother. You're scaring me, she said. We sat. Elaine and me on the couch, Iris in the armchair across from us. Her hands gripped the armrests. We need to tell you something about Vaughn, I said. Defensive walls rose immediately. Did you two have another argument with him? 2 months ago. Vaughn borrowed $450,000 using your mother's signature as guarantor on this house. Iris stared. What? A home equity line against this house, your mother's signature. She turned to Elaine. Mom, you helped Vaughn. Why didn't you tell me? Elaine's hand shook. Honey, I didn't help him. He threatened me. The words hung in the air. Threatened you, Iris repeated slowly. Iris's brain kept trying to rewrite what she was hearing into something less devastating. Mistaken identity, misunderstanding, anything but this. May 15th, Elaine said. He came here while your father was at work, asked me to sign loan documents for an investment. When I said I wanted to talk to you first, to tell your father, that's when he threatened me. For an investment, Iris said hollowly. He said if I refused or told anyone, your marriage would end. Explosive and public. He'd make sure you knew I could have prevented it but chose not to. Iris's face went white. He weaponized you against me, Elaine said. Made me responsible for your marriage surviving. He wouldn't... Iris stopped. Vaughn wouldn't do that. The bank investigated him, I said. Their fraud unit froze the remaining funds. $150,000. The other $300,000 disappeared into untraceable accounts within 48 hours. Iris shook her head. Small movements. He was flagged for fraud 18 months ago. 6 months before he married you. Different bank, different victim. The FBI's building a case. This can't be real. Vaughn's an investment advisor. He's a con artist who lost $400,000 in a failed deal 2 years ago, I said. He's been juggling creditors and lawsuits since before you met him. A year of marriage. Fall 2022 to summer 2024 was any day of it honest, but the timeline matters, Elaine said gently. Spring 2022, his investment collapsed. 6 months later, he met you. We met at the school fundraiser, Iris said distantly. He said he was supporting his colleague's kid. 6 months after losing everything, I said. While creditors were calling, lawsuits being drafted, he met you while drowning. You think he married me for money? We live on my teacher's salary. Vaughn barely contributes to... She stopped, hearing herself. He married you for access, I said. Your mother's trust, this house, our credit, a financially stable family. Tears started down Iris's face. Every memory I have, she whispered. The proposal, the wedding. Was any of it real? Elaine moved to the arm of Iris's chair, hand on her shoulder. Maybe he loved you, she said. Maybe he still does. But he also used you. Both can be true. I defended him to you. To Grady, to everyone. When you said something felt off, I told you that you were being judgmental. You didn't know. Baby, none of us knew the full picture. Iris was quiet, tears falling. He's been stressed lately, she said finally. The past few weeks, taking calls in the other room, working late. I asked if something was wrong, and he said just work stuff. She laughed, broken. The bank froze the funds. That's why he's stressed. His con was falling apart. Memories gaining new meaning. I'm sleeping next to someone I've never actually met, she said. Silence. Outside, a lawnmower started. Normal Sunday sounds. Iris stood abruptly. I need to go. Don't go back there alone, I said, standing. Let us come with you. I need to think. I can't think here. Iris, I defended him, she said. I chose him over you, over Grady. I dismissed every warning sign because I thought you just didn't understand him. Elaine reached for her. Call us when you get home, please. Walking to her car felt like walking through water. Every step heavy, world distorted, sounds muffled by the roar of her life collapsing. We followed her to the driveway. She got in, sat with the engine running, hands gripping the wheel. Through the windshield, I could see her crying, shoulders shaking. Elaine's hand found mine. 90 minutes ago. Iris had arrived expecting pot roast. Now she sat in our driveway, with her marriage rewritten as a crime scene, her husband a stranger who'd threatened her mother. She had to drive to Kingwood, walk through the door, see Vaughn's face, confront him or pretend ignorance, stay or flee. The car backed out slowly. We watched until it disappeared around the corner. She's going back there, Elaine said. Alone. To him. I know. What if he knows we told her? What if he realizes the walls are closing in? I didn't have an answer. We've given Iris the truth, broken Vaughn's spell. But knowledge didn't protect her from a desperate man who'd already proven he'd manipulate anyone to save himself. She was driving home to a man who'd built her life on lies. And we had no idea what happened next. The house felt too quiet after Iris left. 11 o'clock Sunday night, and I sat in my home office staring at my phone. Elaine had gone to bed an hour ago, exhausted from tears. Iris hadn't called despite promising she would. My brain wouldn't turn off. Images of her walking through the door in Kingwood, facing Vaughn, him realizing she knew. I scrolled through my phone aimlessly. News articles I didn't read, emails I'd already answered. Anything to quiet the thoughts. That's when I saw it. A text thread with Grady from April. Buried under months of accumulated messages. I'd been looking for something else, a vendor contact. Maybe, but there it was. April 12th. Dad, something's off about Vaughn. Just trust me. My response, same day. He's your brother-in-law. Give him a chance. Grady's reply the next morning. You never listen to me. I'd completely forgotten this exchange. My finger hovered over the screen, then started scrolling back, further into the conversation history. March appeared. March 3rd. Grady. Vaughn seems fake to me, too smooth. My response. That's called good social skills, son. February 20th. Grady. Did you guys check his background before the wedding? My response. Your sister's a grown woman. She can choose her own husband. April. Grady knew in April, and I told him to give Vaughn a chance. I kept scrolling. Each message a small knife. February through July. A timeline of warnings I'd systematically dismissed. February 28th. Grady. Something about Vaughn's investment stories don't add up. You're 26. He's a professional. Maybe you don't understand the industry. March 15th. The same day Elaine signed the first authorization. Grady. Has Vaughn asked for money yet? Me. That's none of your business. Stop stirring up trouble. April 8th. Grady. Iris seems stressed whenever Vaughn's around. Have you noticed? Me. Marriage takes adjustment. Stop analyzing everything. Every response I'd written dripped with condescension. Every warning dismissed as youth, inexperience, paranoia. Then I found the email from May 20th, 5 days after Vaughn threatened Elaine. The subject line, Dad, serious question about V. I opened it, even though some part of me didn't want to read what came next. Dad, I saw Vaughn yesterday in Webster arguing with some guy in an expensive suit. Parking lot behind the bank on Highway 3. The other guy looked aggressive, pointing fingers. Vaughn looked cornered. Something's wrong. Really wrong. Can we talk? My response, sent 2 hours later. Stop spying on your sister's husband. Focus on your own life. Grady's reply the next morning. Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. May 20th. Vaughn had threatened Elaine on May 15th. Grady saw him being confronted, probably by a creditor, 5 days later. Tried to warn me. Got told to mind his own business. What kind of father chooses comfortable denial over his own son's repeated warnings? June appeared next. Multiple texts. June 2nd. Grady saw Vaughn having lunch with someone who looked like a lawyer. Very serious conversation. Me. Are you following him? Grady. No. I work in Webster. I see him around. Then stop reporting every sighting like he's under investigation. July 15th. The message Grady sent about seeing Vaughn with someone threatening. The one I'd dismissed a few weeks ago, at the bank meeting with David Kramer. Grady. Dad, I saw Vaughn with someone threatening. Briefcase, suit, wrong vibe. This isn't normal. Me. I talked to him. It's handled. Stay out of it. Grady. You're making a mistake. Me. I'm the parent. You're the child. Remember that. I'm the parent. You're the child. Jesus Christ. Then I saw the voicemail notification. June 8th, 3:47 p.m. Duration 152. I'd seen the missed call at the time. Never listened to the message. Assumed it was about borrowing tools or asking about fishing plans. My hand shook as I pressed play. Grady's voice filled the quiet office. He was a cupperhood younger than his years, but steady. Hey, Dad. It's me. I know you think I'm young and paranoid and overreacting. I know you think I don't understand professional life or marriage or any of it, but I need you to hear me out. A pause. Background noise from wherever he'd been. Warehouse sounds, maybe. Vaughn is using our family. I don't know exactly how yet, but he is. He's after money or access or something. The way he looks at you and Mom when you're not paying attention. It's calculating, not loving. Calculating. Another pause. I know Iris loves him. I know you want to support her marriage, but someone needs to investigate him before it's too late. Someone needs to check his background, his finances, his story. Because I think he's lying about all of it. Grady's voice cracked slightly. I love you. I love Mom. I love Iris. Someone has to say this out loud, and I guess it's me. Please don't dismiss this. Please just look into it. The message ended. June 8th, 3:47 p.m. I'd been at a production meeting, discussing valve replacements, never called back. I replayed the voicemail. Then again, every word prophetic. Vaughn using the family, after money or access. Lying about everything. Look into it before it's too late. My 26-year-old son, the one I'd called child, told to focus on his own life. Dismissed as paranoid, had seen it all. Months before the bank investigation, before Celeste's attorney involvement, before any of us understood the scope, Grady knew. And I'd told him to stay out of it. The first tears came then. Not for the money Vaughn stole, not for the legal complications or the bank deadlines, not even for Iris. Though God knows I'd cried for her if I could. I cried for my son, 26 years old, warehouse supervisor. Young enough that I still saw him as the kid who needed help with algebra homework. Smart enough to see through a professional con artist when his experienced father couldn't. Brave enough to keep warning us, even when every attempt got dismissed. Condescended to. Shut down. I scrolled to his contact, finger hovering over the call button. The screen blurred through tears. Midnight on a Sunday. Monday morning, technically. Iris somewhere in Kingwood, with a husband who'd built her life on lies. Elaine upstairs sleeping fitfully. 3 days until the bank deadline. And my son, who'd tried to save us all. Sitting somewhere thinking his father would never listen to him. Some conversations can't wait until morning. I pressed call. Grady answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. 6:30 Monday morning. I'd texted him at midnight asking to talk, then spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling. My voice came out rough. I need to talk to you. In person. This morning if you can. What happened? Is Iris okay? She knows everything now. But this call is about you and me. Silence. Then, coffee shop on Spencer Highway 715. I'll be there. The diner near his warehouse was half empty when I arrived. Grady sat in a back booth, already nursing coffee. 26 years old, but I'd been treating him like he was still 16. I slid across from him, ordered coffee I didn't want. You look terrible, Grady said. Didn't sleep. I spent last night reading every message you sent me about Vaughn. Guarded hope fought years of dismissal in his expression. All 4 months of warnings you ignored? He asked. Every single one. You were right about everything. The waitress brought my coffee. I wrapped my hands around the mug, needing something to hold. Grady's hands wrapped around his own mug like he was holding something steady, while the rest of his relationship with his father shifted underneath. I'm sorry, I said. Not sorry but, not sorry if, just sorry. You tried to warn me for months and I treated you like an interfering kid instead of a perceptive adult. You told me I was paranoid, Grady said quietly. That I didn't understand professional life or marriage. I know. You said I was young and overreactive and stirring up trouble. I know. And I was wrong. Grady looked down at his coffee. February through July. 8 separate warnings. You dismissed every one. I dismissed them to protect my own comfort. Easier to believe you were wrong than to admit I'd misjudged Vaughn. My voice cracked. I failed you as a father. You tried to save us and I told you to mind your own business. Grady was quiet. I thought you'd never admit I was right about something important, he said finally. You still see me as the kid who needed help with homework. I saw you that way because it was easier than seeing you as an adult whose judgment I should trust. We sat in silence. The diner smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. There were more warning signs I didn't tell you about, Grady said. After June, I gave up. What do you mean? I saw Vaughn at a check into cash in July. Those payday loan places. He was arguing with someone at the counter. My chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me? What was the point? You'd already decided I was wrong. Every warning got the same response. Mind your own business, stop spying. So I stopped trying. A payday loan place. Grady saw Vaughn at check-in to cash and kept it to himself because he'd learned there was no point. What else? I asked. Noticed Iris seemed stressed at 4th of July. When Vaughn went to the bathroom, she looked relieved. I almost mentioned it, then remembered how the last 10 conversations had gone. Jesus, Grady, I'm not telling you this to twist the knife. I'm telling you so you understand what it felt like. Being right and invisible. Watching the train coming and screaming warnings nobody hears. I hear you now, I said. I'm listening now. I know. That's why I'm here. He took a breath. I forgive you. But it hurt, Dad, being right and invisible. What do you need from me now? I asked. Going forward, Grady looked at me directly. Just trust me next time. From the first warning, not the 8th. When I say something's wrong, don't dismiss it because I'm younger or because it's inconvenient. Just listen. I will. I promise. We finished our coffee in more comfortable silence. Something healing in the space between us. That afternoon, driving home from the refinery, my phone rang. Celeste, I need to update you. The bank's fraud investigation uncovered something major. I pulled into a gas station parking lot. What? Another family. Spring 2022. Vaughn ran the same scheme. Approached the mother privately. Requested loan for investment. Threatened family relationship if she refused or told husband. How much? $275,000 before the family realized. Settled quietly for $80,000 recovery. Signed NDAs. Didn't pursue criminal charges. Another family. Same playbook. They're willing to cooperate now. Celeste continued. Knowing they're not alone changes things. The husband contacted David Kramer yesterday. Multiple victims, I said. Converts this from family dispute to criminal enterprise. Shows pattern, premeditation, serial fraud. The DA's office is interested, not just civil matter anymore. How many families has Vaughn destroyed while perfecting this performance of desperate respectability? How many more are out there? I asked. Banks investigating his entire client history, cross-referencing loan applications, searching for similar patterns. Could be more families too embarrassed to come forward before. Vaughn's exposure just multiplied. Significantly. One victim is a tragedy, multiple victims is a federal case. FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is reviewing the file now. I sat in my truck in the gas station parking lot. Sun beating through the windshield. World expanding beyond our private nightmare. Our family's pain wasn't unique. It was a pattern. Vaughn had refined this con over years, targeting families like ours. Calculating men do calculated things repeatedly until someone stops them. Grady's words echoed, "Just trust me next time," from the first warning. There might not be a next time for our family. But somewhere, another family was just meeting their charming new son-in-law, watching him integrate into their lives. Unaware he was measuring their assets and vulnerabilities. Now the case was big enough that someone might stop him before the pattern repeated. The legal machinery was shifting from defense to offense, and Vaughn Prescott was running out of places to hide. The assistant district attorney had a file 3 inches thick. Tuesday morning. Celeste's conference room held more people than it ever had during this nightmare me. Elaine, Celeste, Luciana from the bank, David Kramer from fraud investigation, and Marcus Hayes, assistant district attorney for Harris County, early 40s, with the methodical bearing of someone who'd prosecuted white-collar fraud cases for years. He spread documents across the table like evidence at trial. 2 victim families. Identical playbook. $725,000 total attempted fraud, Hayes said. Your case, Plus the 2022 family, same approach, target the mother. Request loan for investment. Threaten family destruction if she refuses or tells husband. He tapped Elaine's affidavit. Documented coercion. Documented threats. Pattern of behavior across multiple victims. This prosecutes itself. Even Grady's friend Marcus, still owed $500 from a personal loan Vaughn never repaid, agreed to give a statement. Timeline for filing, Celeste asked. Charges filed by end of week. Arrest warrant to follow. Elaine's hand found mine under the table. What charges specifically? I asked. Count 1, theft by deception. $450,000, Hayes said, reading from his notes. Count 2, exploitation of elderly person through... I'm 52, not elderly. Elaine interrupted. Legally vulnerable due to family coercion, Hayes said without looking up. It strengthens the case. Count 3, wire fraud for electronic fund transfers. Count 4, pattern of racketeering based on multiple victims. He set down the papers. Combined exposure 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts. DA's office is treating this as priority white-collar crime. 15 to 20 years. Vaughn could spend more time in prison than I had left until retirement. What about restitution? I asked. Criminal case runs parallel to civil recovery, Hayes said. Conviction strengthens your position for asset seizure and repayment, but recovery rates on cases like this... He paused. Realistically, 10 to 20% if we find hidden assets. Luciana shifted in her seat. There's something else you should know. Hayes nodded to her. Vaughn hasn't been seen at the Kingwood residence in 5 days, Luciana said. His car's gone, his office cleared out. We've attempted contact at every known address and phone number. My chest tightened. You're saying he ran... We're saying he's not where he's supposed to be, Hayes said. Adds flight risk to the warrant. Makes it harder to serve. But doesn't change the charges. Where's Iris? I asked, though I already knew. Safe, Celeste said. She filed for emergency divorce last week. She's staying with you, isn't she? Elaine nodded. She came home Sunday night. Hasn't left since. Vaughn was gone. Disappeared into whatever hole con artists find when the game ends. Part of me wanted him caught, prosecuted, sentenced. Another part, a smaller, uglier part, was just relieved he was away from my daughter. Warrant will issue regardless, Hayes said. Flight makes him look guilty, which helps at trial if we find him. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises to stay in contact. That afternoon, we drove to Prosperity Bank for a different kind of meeting. Luciana and David Kramer waited in a conference room with new paperwork spread across the table. The bank's position has evolved, Luciana said, based on fraud investigation findings and coercion evidence. David opened a file. We traced the dispersed funds. Of the $300,000 already released, only $180,000 went to purposes we can't definitively prove fraudulent. The remaining $120,000 went to accounts that vanished within 72 hours. What does that mean for us? I asked. I realized I'd been holding my breath, waiting for them to say denied. Years of working-class life teach you not to expect grace from institutions. It means, Luciana said carefully, that the bank is willing to restructure the loan based on actual legitimate exposure rather than the full line of credit. Celeste leaned forward. Restructure how? New loan amount $180,000, Luciana said. 15-year term at revised interest rate. Monthly payment $1,150. The number hit me like cold water. We can pay that, Elaine said. Her voice broke. We can actually pay that. The remaining $120,000 is treated as fraud loss, David added. Bank pursues separate recovery through criminal restitution and asset seizure. That's our problem, not yours. Celeste was already scanning the new loan documents. Default status removed. Completely, Luciana confirmed. Clean restructure. Your home equity is protected. I looked at Elaine. 2 months ago, we'd been staring at payments we couldn't make. Default proceedings that would take our house, our retirement, everything we'd built. Now $1,150 a month. Manageable on my refinery salary. Survivable. We'll take it, I said. That night, Elaine and I sat at the kitchen table reviewing the new loan paperwork. $180,000 over 15 years. The numbers made sense. Our budget could absorb it. Upstairs. Iris was in her old bedroom. She'd been home for 2 days, speaking only necessary words, moving through the house like a ghost of herself. But she was home, safe. We're going to be okay, Elaine said. Financially, I mean. Iris is home. Vaughn's gone. Charges filed. Yeah, we're going to be okay. She looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. I forgot what this feels like, she said. Being okay. That night, I slept through until morning without waking once. Sleep came like a wave I'd been swimming against for 2 months, finally letting it carry me, instead of fighting to stay conscious and vigilant. No nightmares about bank notices or Vaughn's calm smile or Iris walking into danger. No 3 a.m. panic about payment schedules or legal deadlines. Just sleep. Deep and dreamless. My body finally believing what my mind was starting to accept. The immediate crisis was over. The legal machinery was grinding forward. Charges filed, loan restructured. Vaughn disappeared into whatever hole con artists find when their marks wake up. But when I woke Wednesday morning to coffee brewing and Elaine's quiet movements in the kitchen, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Iris still hadn't spoken more than necessary words since learning her marriage was theater. The house felt heavy with things unsaid. Some resolutions come through courts and contracts, measured in restructured loans and filed charges. Others require time we couldn't quantify or schedule. Healing the family would take longer than fixing the finances. But at least now we had time to try. The moving boxes said bedroom and kitchen in Iris's careful teacher handwriting. Late August Saturday. Elaine and I helped our daughter carry her life into a 1-bedroom Montrose apartment. Small, but hers, first place she'd lived alone since college. The smell of fresh paint and possibility filled the rooms. Grady brought furniture from storage, assembled the bed frame with the methodical focus he brought to everything. Physical work kept conversation light, manageable. "You could stay with us longer," Elaine said, unpacking kitchen boxes. "Save money while the divorce finalizes." "I need my own space," Iris said. She was labeling boxes, organizing chaos. "I need to remember who I am alone." "Smart," Grady said from the bedroom. "Clean break. Fresh start." I watched Iris move through the small apartment, making decisions about where things should go. Confident, purposeful. Not the shattered woman who'd driven away from our house in tears. "The divorce was granted last week," she said, reading my mind. "Fraud circumstances got me expedited scheduling. I should be legally single by October." "That fast?" Elaine asked. "Judge saw the criminal charges, the coercion evidence, and moved us to the front of the docket. The standard 60-day waiting period still applies, but nothing else got delayed." Iris opened a box marked teaching supplies, started arranging items on a shelf. "I'm keeping the name Holcomb at school," she said, not looking at us. "Professionally, I mean." "You don't have to keep anything from him," I said. "I'm not keeping it from him." She turned to face me. "I'm keeping it from me. I earned that name teaching 4 years. My students know me as Mr. Holcomb. I built that professional identity. It's mine now, not his." She wrote Holcomb on another box and paused. The name still carried weight. But now it was hers to define, not his to weaponize. "Therapy starts Tuesday," she added. Referral from the school counselor. Specializes in relationship trauma. That's good, Elaine said quietly. We unpacked in silence for a while. The comfortable kind that comes from working together toward a shared goal. Later. Sitting on the living room floor, no couch yet, I asked the question Elaine and I had been avoiding. How are you really doing? Iris pulled her knees to her chest. Not okay, she said finally. But I will be eventually. I keep thinking about what I missed, what I chose not to see. He was professional at deception, Elaine said. That's not your failure. Maybe. I'm angry at myself for missing signs, angrier at him. Therapy's supposed to help me separate those. She looked at me, then at Elaine. Thank you for not saying you warned me, even though you kind of did. We love you, I said. That's all that matters now. 3 weeks later. Sunday dinner at our house felt like stepping into a different timeline. All 4 Carlyles around the dining room table, first full family meal since the truth emerged. Elaine had cooked Iris's favorite chicken fried steak. Mashed potatoes, gravy that smelled like home. Grady brought wine. Good wine, not the cheap stuff he usually grabbed. Feels weird having everyone here without tension, he said, pouring glasses. Weird good or weird bad? Iris asked. Weird like we forgot how to do this without secrets. 3 weeks. Iris had lived alone for 3 weeks, and already the Kingwood house felt like someone else's life. We ate. Passing dishes. Falling into rhythms we'd practiced for decades. But the conversation felt different. Lighter in some ways, heavier in others. Like we were learning a language we thought we'd already mastered. After dinner, over coffee and Elaine's pecan pie. I said what I'd been planning all week. I want to propose a new family rule, I said. 3 faces turned toward me. Going forward, we ask before assuming. We listen before dismissing. When someone says something's wrong, we believe them first and investigate second. No more protecting each other with silence, Elaine added. That's what Vaughn used against me. Made me think silence was protection. That means actually believing me when I say something's wrong, Grady said, looking at me. It does, I said. I'm sorry it took this long to learn that. Iris set down her coffee cup. That sounds good in theory, she said. But what about the hard stuff? The stuff we don't want to talk about? Like what? Elaine asked. Like what do we do if Vaughn comes back? Iris's voice was steady. Do we talk about that? Or pretend it won't happen? The table went quiet. This was the test, the first hard question under the new rules. Restraining orders active, I said. Warrants issued. If he contacts you, you call 911 first, then call me. He's facing 15 to 20 years, Grady added. He'd be stupid to come back. Stupid or desperate, Iris said. Either way, I said. You're not alone. We have a safety plan. Celeste documented everything. He comes anywhere near you, he goes to jail. Grady shifted in his seat. I drive by your place sometimes, he said to Iris. Just checking. That weird, the old version of this family would have deflected, made a joke, changed the subject. A little, Iris said. But also kind of nice. Knowing someone's paying attention. The dinner table held 4 people and 100 unspoken promises. This time they were trying to speak them out loud, before silence hardened into secrets. I checked the locks 3 times before bed. Iris continued. I jump when my phone rings if I don't recognize the number. Therapy's helping. But I'm still scared sometimes. That's normal, Elaine said. I know. But it's nice to say it out loud. To not pretend I'm fine when I'm not. We cleared dishes together. Conversation flowing easier than it had in months. Grady told a story about a warehouse mishap. Iris talked about her second grader's latest antics. Elaine mentioned a book club she was thinking of joining. Ordinary conversation. The kind we'd taken for granted before. The damage was real, Iris's broken marriage. Elaine's violated trust. My failures acknowledged. Grady's years of being unheard. We couldn't undo any of it. But tonight, around this table, we were building something honest from the wreckage. Not healed, healing. Some endings arrive quietly, in courtrooms and paperwork. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, scarred, uncertain, but finally honest. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough. The kitchen smelled like it used to. Before secrets. Thanksgiving Day, November 2024. 6 months since the loan documents first appeared on this same table. Turkey in the oven. Elaine's cornbread dressing. The pecan pie Iris brought from her Montrose apartment. Grady had arrived early to help cook, something he never used to do. Iris set the table, humming along to music playing from Elaine's phone. Conversation flowed without landmines. We'd learned to navigate truth together. My students asked what I'm thankful for, Iris said, mashing potatoes. I told them my family. Even after everything? Grady asked. Especially after everything. Now I know real. We ate at 3 o'clock, passing dishes, telling stories. Grady talked about a promotion coming at the warehouse. Iris mentioned a parent-teacher conference that went surprisingly well. Elaine and I listened, asked questions, laughed at the right moments. Ordinary. Beautiful. Earned. After dinner. After pie and coffee, I asked everyone to move to the living room. I have something for Grady, I said. Elaine knew what was coming. We'd discussed it for weeks. Iris and Grady exchanged glances. I handed Grady an envelope. You warned us for months about Vaughn, I said. February through July, every time. I dismissed you, told you to mind your own business, called you paranoid, treated you like an interfering kid. Grady held the envelope without opening it. You tried to protect Iris. I continued. Tried to protect this family, and I wouldn't hear it. That was my failure, not yours. Dad. Open it. He did. His face went pale when he saw the check. $60,000, he said. Dad, I can't. This is too much. $60,000. The exact amount the bank reduced the loan when they restructured it. Grady's warnings, converted to currency. It's for your house, I said. Down payment. Because loyalty and perception deserve reward. I just wanted you to listen, Grady said. His voice cracked. The money doesn't... You earned this by seeing what I refused to see. I interrupted. Your warnings, if I'd heeded them in April, would have saved us far more. This isn't a gift. It's recognition. Grady looked at the check, then at me. Thank you, he said, for hearing me. Finally, we embraced properly, completely for the first time since this nightmare began. Over his shoulder, I saw Elaine crying. Iris was too. Healing they weren't sure would come. The kids left together around 7:30. Iris was following Grady to look at houses this weekend, helping him search neighborhoods. Elaine and I cleaned the kitchen in comfortable silence, then took coffee to the back porch. November air, cool but not cold. Houston's version of autumn. 6 months ago we were drowning, Elaine said. 6 months ago I thought love meant never questioning you. What do you think now? I remembered dismissing Grady's first warning in April, 7 months and one family implosion ago, when I thought I knew better. I thought unconditional love meant blind faith, I said. Accepting everything without challenge. Never voicing doubts because that would mean I didn't trust you. And now I understand real love asks hard questions. Trusts enough to voice doubts. Silence isn't protection, it's abdication. Elaine sipped her coffee. I thought protecting you meant keeping secrets, she said. Thought handling problems alone was strength. I was wrong too. We both were. We sat in silence, watching the neighbor's lights come on across the fence. I thought questioning you meant I didn't trust you, I said. Turns out not questioning you meant I didn't trust myself. And Vaughn used that. Elaine said, used my silence, your trust, Iris's love, used our family's habit of keeping quiet to keep peace. Not anymore. No, not me more. Inside. Elaine's phone rang. She rose to answer, and I followed her into the kitchen. Celeste's name on the screen. Elaine answered. Put it on speaker without asking if I wanted to listen. This was the new normal transparency without thought. Elaine, it's Celeste. Is this a good time? I'm here, I said. We're both here. Good. I have news. Vaughn was arrested in Phoenix yesterday, Arizona State Police, coordinating with Harris County DA's office. Elaine's hand found mine. Extradition, I asked. Pending. Few weeks for paperwork. Trial likely spring 2025. You'll be notified of all proceedings. Thank you for letting us know, Elaine said. One more thing, Celeste added. The other victim family from 2022, they're testifying. Makes the prosecution's case even stronger. We talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. The phone on speaker was such a small thing, tinny voice filling the kitchen, but it represented everything we'd rebuilt from ruins. Elaine set her phone on the table. The same table where loan documents once hid secrets. Where she'd begged me to let her handle it alone. Where we'd fought and cried and finally started telling truth. I refilled our coffee. Noted the date on the calendar. November 28, 2024. 6 months since this began. The kitchen looked the same. Same table, same cabinets, same worn linoleum we'd been meaning to replace for years. But everything was different. The table that held secrets now held openness. The couple that protected each other with silence now protected each other with truth. The father who dismissed his son now listened. The daughter who defended a fraud now lived independently, building a life defined by her own choices. The family that nearly broke had chosen piece by piece to rebuild honestly. Vaughn would face trial. Justice would grind forward through courts and depositions and eventual sentencing. That mattered. But it wasn't the story. The story was sitting at this kitchen table with my wife, drinking coffee in comfortable silence. Knowing if her phone rang again, she'd answer on speaker. Knowing if something worried her, she'd say it out loud. Knowing if I questioned something, it meant I trusted us enough to ask. Some lessons cost a daughter's marriage and 6 months of hell and a loan that would take 15 years to repay. But we'd learned them. And that, finally, was enough. And to you, listening to my story, remember this. The people closest to you deserve your questions, not just your trust. I spent months believing love meant never doubting. I dismissed my son's warnings because I thought experience trumped instinct. I protected my wife with silence when she needed my voice. Don't make my mistake. The cost of not asking hard questions isn't peace. It's the wreckage you discover when it's too late to prevent it. People might call this a revenge story, but it's really about survival. When someone threatens your family, you don't seek payback. You seek truth. You document everything. Trust your instincts. And protect the people who matter. I believe God allowed this crisis to teach me something I'd been refusing to learn. That real love asks questions. That trust without accountability enables harm. And that the hardest conversations often save everything. Faith and action aren't opposites, they work together. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever ignored a warning you wish you'd heeded? Some see this as a revenge story, but it's about truth and survival. Share this with someone who needs it. And if you want more real stories with honest lessons, subscribe to this channel. These aren't just revenge stories. They're reminders that family is worth the hard conversations. Thank you for staying until the very end. I appreciate you more than you know. A final reminder. Some details in this story have been adjusted for privacy and storytelling, but the lesson, the core truth about trust, questions, and family is real. Take care of yourself and the people you love.